My first impression of our next speaker was, how can someone so young, someone who's only a year older than me, be so advanced? But Carly Crutchfield has a get up and go get 'em attitude. And there's nothing that Carly couldn't do if she put her mind to it. I'm absolutely certain of that. She has been in the property industry for the last 10 years, and to date she has optioned and developed $183 million worth of property and been involved in more than 350 property transactions. She's even able to do it in her sleep. So that's a pretty good accomplishment. Today, Carly is one of Australia's most sought-after property development educators. Carly has spoken to more than 10,000 people, but she's only making her debut on the 4-day seminar stage today, so you need to make her feel very, very welcome. Please give her a huge round of applause for Miss Carly Crutchfield.
Thanks, guys. How you going? How are the rest of you? What a weekend, hey? Normally you just get a weekend on shares or property or personal development, but a whole weekend of all of this. Give yourselves a round of applause because it's hardcore. Put your hands together for yourself. Now, if I was walking down the street, who of you would think to yourself, oh, she's a property developer? That's what I thought. You'd probably more likely to think, oh, she's up here for schoolies. Not so, I'm here for a conference. But look, that's good news for you. Who here is interested in property development? Or property at all? Fantastic. Who has actually developed property before? Okay, good, a bit of the room. Who is freaked out, thinks it's risky, thinks they don't have enough money? Be honest with me, put your hands up. Thinks they don't have enough money to start, it's too much work. I completely understand, because that's exactly what I thought until I knew how to do it. And people often say to me, isn't property development too risky? I say, yeah, it is. You're right. Property development is risky. So is crossing the road. If you don't know what you're doing, it is very risky. If I put a blindfold around you and went out to the Gold Coast Highway and said, right, cross the road, is that risky? Come on, is that risky? Absolutely. If I said, right, go and develop this $5 million property and you've never done it before, that's bloody risky, isn't it? That's ridiculous. So property development's risky if you don't know what you're doing. If you do know what you're doing, it is extremely exciting. So for the next 90 minutes, I'm going to talk to you about property development. But before I do, I want to go over one thing. Public speaking is a little bit like dating. Has anybody ever been on a bad date? Come on, who's been on a bad date? Unfortunately, most of us. You know, you're putting your all into it, you're really trying to interest the other person, you're giving it a lot of energy and you're just not getting much back. Well, that's what public speaking can be like. So I want to make a deal with you guys. If we can have a good date, because this is our first date, we've got to both put everything we've got into it. I will give you as much as I've got. In fact, I'm going to give you about 2.5 hours worth of information in an hour and a half. So I'm going to talk fast, it's going to be full on, I'm going to teach you some really good strategies. I'm going to stay energetic so that it's interesting for you, but I need you guys to give me back the energy and I want it to be a mutual first date. Is that okay? Yeah. Fair enough? Yeah, that's the kind of response. So when I ask questions and what have you, put your hand up, get excited and get involved in it. Okay. This is what we're going to talk about. I'm going to talk to you about the facts because there are absolutely myths out there about property development. So I'm going to dispel those for you and tell you what the real deal is. We're going to talk about the 7 stages of property development. I'm going to break it down for you so that it actually makes sense and it's not confusing and it's not just this blurry subject. I'm going to give you some real deals I've done so you see how it actually works. I'm going to tell you how to own a property debt-free in just 12 months. Who would like to have a property in 12 months with no debt? Fantastic, I'll show you. I'm also going to tell you how you can retire in just 3 years using a very specific strategy that I've got. Now, you might not want to retire, but you'll have the ability to if you do want to. And I'm also going to tell you how to use other people's money to do it. So some of you might be thinking, well, look, great, property development sounds exciting, but, I've got $1,000 in the bank. It's not for me. I'm going to show you how you can get involved with no money. Who thinks that sounds good? Okay, good. Now, over this weekend, we've learned a lot about different ways of generating money. We've learned about chunks of cash, so making big chunks of money, right? We've also learned about getting cash flow, right? Who would like cash flow? Okay, good, we've got the room. Who would like big chunks of money? We've also got the room. Who would just like both? Doesn't want to have to pick. All right, well, what if I was to show you a way to get, let's say, $1,900 per week, passive, sitting at home? Who would like that? All right, but we want chunks as well, right? So what if I said also I'll give you, let's say, $2 million worth of property, debt-free, no debt attached, you own it. No bank, no partner, nothing. Who wants that? Now I've got you, now it's turning into a good day, right? Now usually, the strategies that we learn growing up and that our parents teach us and what have you, this would take somebody about 64 years using conservative strategies that people use today to buy property. So, who wants to wait 64 years? The date just got terrible, didn't it? What if I could show you? I mean, I could show you how to do it in 6 months, but that's going to be a bit risky and not all of us are going to get there. I want to try and show you something that the whole room can do. So what if I showed you how to do it in 3 years? Does that sound feasible? That sounds real, doesn't it? Who wants to learn that? Well, we better get into it very quickly. Now, at the end of my presentation, we're going to do a very quick recap. I'm going to come and pick somebody out of the audience to come up on stage and just recap in 1 or 2 minutes what we've spoken about. Is that okay? Not such a good date anymore? I'll make it as safe for you as possible. Okay, before I get into it, I do want to ask you to do one thing. I need you to think outside the box. It's really, really fortunate that in Australia we have a love affair with property and we're taught to like property and we're taught to buy property. Unfortunately, the way we're taught to do it is to go out, buy a house, your castle, pay it off for 25 years and one day you'll own it. What a bloody ridiculous idea. It's just ridiculous. My parents did it. And they now say to me, geez, I can't believe we did it. It's ridiculous. You work like a dog to earn your money, to put it into a mortgage so that in 25 years you'll own it? That doesn't make sense. So we're right on one stage that we've got the passion for property, but we're wrong about the way we're doing it. And this is proven by the fact that when we reach the age of 65 and we want to retire, more than 80% of us are either dead or have to rely on other people to support us. So whatever we're doing is not working, but you guys have figured that out and that's why you're here, right? So I'm going to give you some strategies and I need you to think outside the box so that you track with them and they make sense with you. Is that okay? Are we willing to bend our comfort zone just a little? Okay, great. Now, before I teach you how to make a hell of a lot of money, I want you to have a reason for creating a lot of money. If your reason for creating wealth is so that you can just be bloody rich, I'll tell you right now, it's going to be boring. And you probably won't get there, and if you do, you probably won't last. For me, as you can see, my passion is charity work and social responsibility. I'm absolutely insane about it. I've got 3 of my own charities that I've started, and I put as much of my money as possible into that and actually spend a lot of my time doing it. Now, the reason I bring this up is because I do this work, it makes me more passionate about making more money. It just does. Because I tell you, once you make a few $1 million, it's easy to make a few million more and a few million more. It really is. But if you have a reason for wanting to create that wealth other than, I just want to be rich, then you're going to be able to keep going. And it's going to be more fun for you because you've got a purpose. Does that make sense? Excellent. And I think that's something you've already spoken about a lot this weekend, so I can feel that it makes sense to you guys. So have a reason you want to create wealth, whether it be for your family, your friends, whatever it is, have that reason and don't make money the motivation because it is the weakest motivation you'll ever have. Having said that, let's look at how we can create some wealth. Business is fantastic, and as I said, you've learned all kinds of ideas this weekend. Shares, brilliant, and we just heard Daniel, who's got some fantastic strategies. Lotto, if anybody works this out, come and let me know. I'm sure somebody's going to crack it one day. And property. Now, this is my personal favourite. It's what I've done very good at. I absolutely love it, and there is just no end to how creative you can be with it. Like, the days of just going and buying a property, putting down a 10% deposit and paying off a mortgage for 25 years, forget it. There are so many creative ways to invest in property. You know, we just heard Daniel and he was speaking about CFDs and portfolio margins and all kinds of different strategies for the share market, right? It actually is the same for property. If you understand the property market, you'll understand that you can trade it, you can buy it for no money, you can sell it without ever having owned it. You can make millions of dollars in property without ever putting in any of your own money. Property is like anything else. It's a commodity that you can trade. And the more you understand about it, the more creative you can get. And that's why I like property. 87% of the world's millionaires have created their wealth through property. You reckon they're onto something? Did you know 161 millionaires are created every single day through property? Isn't that amazing? Every single day. It starts to make it sound like it's feasible for you, doesn't it? And it absolutely is. But what type of property? Do we renovate? Do we buy old? Do we buy new? Do we buy and hold? Do we buy and sell? What do? There's so many types. Personally, I like property development or active property investing. There's two types. There's passive and there's active. Passive investing is when you buy and you hold. So you're not doing much work. You go out, you buy property, you forget about it, it sits there, it goes up in value. An absolutely brilliant way to make money. I advocate it, I've done it, and I know a lot of other people who've done it and made a lot of money. What it means, though, is you wait. You don't create. When you're an active investor, you are creating equity. When you're a passive investor, you are waiting for equity. Does that make sense? So it's not that one's better than the other, that one works better than the other. One works faster than the other. So if you want to be out there trying to create wealth as quick as possible, if you want to make as much as you can in the short amount of time span, then active investing is what you should be doing when it comes to property. So what is a property developer? There's a lot of different ideas out there, and this is probably the most common one. Someone who improves the value of land by having a property structure built on the land. That's the definition that they know of as a property developer. Put your hand up if that's what you think a property developer is. Exactly. I would challenge that and say it's someone who improves the value of the land. And this is where people think that property development is risky, or there's too much involved, or it's too much hard work, or I need a lot of money, because they think that this is what a property developer is. When in fact, this is what a property developer is. It is somebody who improves the value of the land. Now, you might not ever own it to do that, and I'm going to talk about this. You might not ever even build anything. You might just trade and increase the value through other ways. So keep that in mind. If you're sitting here right now thinking, oh, I'm not really much of a construction person, do I look like much of a construction person? No way. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to get out the hammer and what have you and start building. Your job as a property developer is to increase the value of the land. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, the easiest way I can explain the different ways to make money out of property is to take it back to a basic product. Because I could be standing up here talking about absolutely anything. Cars, shares, carpet, chocolate, Coca-Cola. Imagine you wanted a glass of Coca-Cola and you went to a restaurant and Coca-Cola was valuable, right? And it went up in value. It appreciated. And you wanted a glass of Coca-Cola and you went to the restaurant in this hotel and you said, can I have a glass of Coca-Cola? They'd say, sure, $4.50. They'd probably say $9 here. But you get a glass of Coke, they've prepared it for you in a glass, they've put ice in, they've put a straw in, and you're paying top market, right? You've come in at the top of the market. Before you, all these other people have made money on it, haven't they? Somebody came up with the idea of Coke, somebody then made the Coke, somebody wholesaled it to a supermarket or something, Supermarket sold it to the hotel gave it to the cafe gave it to you. Do you see that? The average guy goes and buys property from a real estate agent up here. All these people have made money before him. If I was to go and buy a property right now, say we were all walking down the street and we saw a development and we all thought, oh, I want one of those as an investment property. I guarantee that you would pay between $30,000 and $45,000 more than I would, even if it's not my development. Even if I had no idea who the developer was. Why? Because I understand the subject, and I'll explain it like this. Imagine, who here's from Queensland? Okay, who here's not from Queensland? Okay, not from the Gold Coast? Okay, good. So those that just put their hand up as not being from Queensland, if we wanted a glass of Coca-Cola, we'd probably have to buy it from the restaurant because we don't know where the corner store is. Those that are from Queensland, they've got a little bit more knowledge, go, look, I do want a glass of Coca-Cola, but I'm going to go down to the corner store and I'm going to pay $3. I'm going to save myself $1.50. And I'm able to do that because I have local knowledge. Or they could even go, you know what, there's actually a supermarket another block down the street. I'm going to buy it for $2. Those bloody idiots are paying $4.50. Or he might go, you know what, I've spoken to a couple of other people here. There's 12 of us that want a glass of Coke. I'm going to walk down and get it myself and pay only $1.50. Now we're talking. You've gotten a little bit more creative, haven't you? You've got local knowledge and you're being a bit of an entrepreneur. Or you could go a step further and go, I actually understand this Coca-Cola business well enough that I reckon I could go to the guy who makes it. And you know, I know the business well enough that I'll have a conversation with him and he'll be willing to talk to me because I'm not just your average guy. I understand what I'm talking about when it comes to Coca-Cola. And I reckon he'll sell it to me for $1. And I know where the factory is and I know how to get in. So now instead of spending $4.50 like all those people not from Queensland, I'm going to buy it for $1 because I've learnt how to speak to Coca-Cola people, I know where the factory is, and I'm going to buy it for $1. Or you go, you know what, I'm going to make it myself. Stuff this. They're all paying $4.50. I want to pay 50 cents. I'm going to go get the materials myself. I'm going to do it myself. Now, what do you need to do that? You need time. You also need a recipe. Unfortunately, with Coca-Cola, there's a secret recipe. Do you know only 2 people in the world know the recipe for Coca-Cola? And they're not allowed to fly on the same plane together? They've got to fly on separate planes. Luckily, property development's not like this. It is a bit of a secret world, though, because there's not many people out there teaching it. In fact, I'm the only person in the Southern Hemisphere that teaches this subject in whole. It's just not a subject that's often taught. You could even get even more entrepreneurial and go, you know what? I want it for free. I want to pay them later. Now you're thinking like a business person. I'm going to get a contract. I'm going to go up to them and say, look, I will give you this contract and promise to pay you later if you give me that Coke now. They give you 12 bottles of Coke, you take it, sell it to somebody else, sell 10 of them to somebody else for a profit, and keep 2 for yourself, or keep the profit for yourself and pay the guys back. Does that make sense? Like getting it on consignment, right? This is totally possible in property development. So this is the only place where you're actually constructing. But if you understand the subject of property development, then you've then got that much more power over being able to buy property. Put your hand up if in the next 10 years you're going to buy a property investment. Excellent. Then you absolutely have to, without doubt, understand the subject of property and the cycle of a product as far as property is concerned. Because if you don't, you're going to be paying $30,000 to $45,000 more for a property when I'm paying $30,000 to $45,000 less, because I understand how to negotiate with a developer. I understand how to find the developer, and I understand how to put those contracts in place so that I can get that discount. Does that make sense? So it's about understanding the product cycle so you have that negotiation power, that leverage. Yeah? Putting the deal together, that is the magic and the money in property development. It's not the building, it's not the construction, that's formula. It's when you buy it. It's how much you pay for it. It's how you structure it. It's whether you spend your own money or not. You're the coordination point between the builder, the bank, and the architect. I left school when I was 12 years old. I have absolutely zero qualifications to stand on stage and talk to you about this, except for the fact that I've been doing it for 10 years and I've made millions of dollars doing it. I hire people who have qualifications coming out of their ears. I hire builders, architects, engineers, town planners who did go to school, who do know how to do it. Who's read Think and Grow Rich? You guys have got to go read Think and Grow Rich, those that haven't. It's a fantastic book written in the early 1900s by Napoleon Hill. Who knows Henry Ford? Famous man, invented the Ford cars, of course. Now, he basically had very, very little education and was not the most intelligent guy as far as book smarts go. Yet he was running one of the biggest corporations in the world, one of the most successful companies in the world. And the media was trying to nail him, saying to him, "You're not smart enough, what do you know?" And they did an interview with him where they asked him these random questions, such as, when was the war of blah blah, what year was it? And how many soldiers did we send into the war and how many came back? Just questions trying to test how knowledgeable he was. Now, he wasn't able to answer any of those questions, and he said, "You know what, it doesn't matter and it doesn't prove a thing. Because right now I could pick up the phone and speak to any of my managers who are the best in the world at what they do and can give me the exact right answer, and I can tell you like that." And that is the point of this. As a property developer, you don't need to be an architect, you don't need to be an engineer, you don't need to be a builder, you don't need to be any of those things. What you do need to be is entrepreneurial. You need to be a creator. You need to be the kind of person that can put deals together. Who thinks they're that kind of person? Come on, who thinks they're entrepreneurial? A creator, a deal maker. Excellent, we've got the room. And that's what property development is. It's not building, it's not understanding everything in architecture, it's being creative and being entrepreneurial. There are 7 main steps in property development. You've got to go and find the site. You've got to then do an analysis on the site. You've got to do a financial feasibility. You've got to get finance to be able to buy it. You've got to get your plans approved. You've then got to construct it, and then you've got to sell it. Do you want to know a little bit more about all these steps? Okay. Step 1, find the site. Where do you look? Well, obviously this is the most important thing, because if you can't find a site, you can't build one. Your local newspaper is one of the best places to find a development site. Get the newspaper on a Saturday. Don't go to the section, the home section. You know, every Saturday we get our paper and it's got like a home section in it, or a domain, or home builders, home buyers, yeah? Don't go to that section. That's the section for people who want to buy Coca-Cola at $4.50 a glass.